Everyone, we'll get started in just a minute. It's great to see you today. Looking forward to a good afternoon. So thank you for giving us some of your time as we do our COTP today. All right, well, it's 3:04, so we appreciate everyone being here. Looking forward to a good session, and thank you for giving of your time this afternoon. So let's go ahead and get started. Stephanie, go ahead and take me to the next slide. You can see our RTAC mission here, but one thing I always want to just bring up is the importance of partners and partnerships in this transformational work, because we always got to remember it does really take a village to do this work. And so we thank you for all that you do and our core partners and the work that they support us with across this RTAC. So thank you very much. Go ahead and take me to the next slide. All right, here is our agenda for this afternoon. In just a minute, I'll hand it over to Yvonne and she'll start our welcoming ritual. You can see we'll get a little bit into the revised California way, and we'll spend a lot of time on our annual progress report today, and then we'll be able to close it up. So at this point, we'll go ahead and head over to the next slide, and I will hand it over to Yvonne.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome and happy Thursday. Although yesterday I was saying happy Monday, so I was taking us all the way back to the beginning of the week, so we don't want to do that. So, but it's great to see you guys all here in the space. And so, annual progress report. Whew, that is a hefty title, and I think sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions around what that means and the comfort level. So we want to know right now, what is your current comfort level with the ability to complete it? And so Miss Ebony, I believe, is our guru, or Stephanie is going to, there it is. It's like Vanna White. Just pops up on the screen. So what is your current comfort level? Are you feeling like you're a beginner, you're intermediate, or you're a pro? You got this. And I call Dr. Kemp our data guru, and so she loves all things data, and she's the pro. I want to be her when I grow up. So but what's your current level? So if you guys can click that for me. I'm going to be completely candid. Nobody's going to be able to see your responses individually, but I feel very much sometimes that I'm a beginner, and that I'm thankful for people like Dr. Kemp who can help bring me along. So thank you guys for taking some time to fill that out. And Dr. Kemper, do we get to see the results, the poll bars? Uh-oh, you're muted, Dr. Kemp.
I think I have a couple of more people and I'll show it right now. Let me.
Oh, awesome.
And let's share it.
Yay. So there we go. So we got 61% of the folks in the room feel like they are beginners. Me. We got 28% that are intermediate. I love that. And 11% are the pros that I got this. I appreciate that. Well, thank you guys for just taking that time to be vulnerable in the space and just kind of get us all grounded in the work today. So with that, I believe I'm turning it back to Dr. Kemp. Oh, David, back to David.
Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for sharing with us. We appreciate knowing where you're at and how we can better support you. Stephanie, go ahead and take me to the next slide. Now, here is our updated version of the California Way. Now, there's not a side-by-side view, so I'll kind of take you a little bit through this just so you can see some of the changes. The previous version, instead of beginning with the why, began with the what, followed by the how, the why, and then there was also a section that headed as sustainability. Whereas this updated version now begins with the why, which Seems like it probably should. And things that remain the same. Excuse me. The focus of the why remains on the overarching values. The focus of the how, once again, remains on the capacity building strategies, but you can see it slimmed down to from the 9 down to the 5, which we've been looking at. And then with some expansion, you see in the what. Sustainability still remains a focus, but it's more integrated into this. And we now see that there's an addition of the header. You see the why, the how, and the what of community schools transformation. So it has changed a bit. Some things have remained the same, much like when you think of the APR, but there are some differences. Go ahead and take me to slide 6. So this is part of what we're going to get a little deeper into today. This is the what and or the formative purpose of the annual progress report, which is, let's be honest, it's truly about data for learning and improvement. Okay. So you really want to keep that in mind. Data about learning and about improvement. So the purpose of this is to assess not only your implementation efforts, but to encourage reflection as a part of the ongoing continuous improvement process. One of the words that came up quite a bit recently is the word reflection. This is really supposed to be reflective of our efforts and how we're moving forward and how we're looking at continuous improvement. All right, take me to the next slide. So here you can see the content for the annual progress report, which really has 6 sections in it. The capacity building strategies, engaging educational partners, your whole child and family supports inventory, your goals and actions, feedback and improvement, and attachments. Now, there are some differences here you can see here. One of the things that we'll probably dig into deeply today is about open-ended questions. So keep that in mind. So as you can see here, also, once again, we're noticing about the capacity building strategies as it has evolved from 9 down into 5 strategies. That doesn't mean anything's gone away. It's just been integrated into those 5. Take me to the next slide. And here we have the APR, or I'll say tentative, the tentative APR timeline. One note, in meeting with the STAC and CDE, it was asked if the site completed the process early, could it receive a copy of the submission, which could then be forwarded to the LEA to support their process and efforts. They said yes. STAC and CDE said they could support that process. They do say that once you submit, you also get a PDF. But they said, especially if sites are completing the submission early and that the LEA is wanting to get reports of that to support with their process, they said, just let them know. You can go through us if you want, and we can let STAC and CDE know if you want, but we're trying to look at ways that we can support your process. Also, just a reminder, STAC is providing a draft collaboration Google Doc for preparing the APR, but all the submissions will be on the Qualtrics link. So that Google Doc is just to support the collaborative process. But the I can't speak. The Qualtrics link was also provided on your email that you received about the APR on April 2nd that went out to everyone. And just a reminder, there are 2 parts to the annual reporting. There's the APR and the annual expenditure report. Now, I'm not sure who I'm handing it over to at this time, but I will do that.
I'll take it, David. Thanks, Stephanie. So in our peer learning webinar last month, in the last 2 months, we've talked about the mindset shifts. And for all of the seasoned educators in the room, progress reports and documents or accountability documents, they've had maybe a feel of I've gotcha or prove it to me. This document is different. This one is, as we discussed in peer learning webinar last month, it's about reflection. It's about looking at not just the man in the mirror, but it's everyone in the mirror for this report. But it's what have we done? What is the progress we've made from a specific standpoint? So let's jump into it. Next slide, please. So as I alluded to, reflection, reflection, reflection. It's the efforts that have gone into the implementation where you are. So if you're a planning grant district, and it's the LEA submitting it, if you're an implementation and you're a site and LEA submitting it, what's the effort that has gone in? And we're going to talk about that in a couple of slides, what that looks like, what that sounds like. But this is in the spirit of continuous improvement. This is in what have we done? What impact has that made? Where do we want to go next? What do we never want to do again? So it's in the spirit of reflection. So again, go back to that man in the mirror and sit with your decision-making team and ask yourselves, so where are we? Next slide, please. So the one thing that we said in December or November, we're going to say again, it's not an I gotcha. This is not the accountability report that you're looking at. Did I do every dot? Did I cross every T? We're not doing that. We're looking for the story, and we're looking for what have you done and where will you go? That is the spirit of the annual progress report. Look at it just the way we are shifting our minds to look at our students, our home adults, and our community from an asset-based mindset. What have we done? What have we accomplished? Who have we connected with? What partnerships have we built? In the spirit of the work that we're doing, what collaborations have we improved? How are we working together? What's how have we revised how we focus on students, how we shifted our mindset as we focus on students and what they have and what they need, in addition to their home adults and all of the partners in our school district, outside of our school district, for-profit, nonprofit, and so on and so forth. Not an I gotcha, asset-based. Next slide, please. So things that we want to do in the annual progress report. It reframe challenges. So if you have had a barrier, we're going to shift how we report on that. Viewing challenges as deficits to opportunities for growth and leveraging existing assets. It's not something that you've missed. It's not something that you got wrong. It's how can we use this to take it to the next step? We want to emphasize our strengths. You all have some amazing things that you are doing well, just like our students in the classroom. Start with that and use that as a catapult and a launching pad for the work that you're doing and the work that you're going to do. And remember that focus on it promoting equity and inclusivity. Inclusivity around who participated, inclusivity as to whose needs it meets, whose assets it's uplifting. We want to make sure that it's reflective of our entire school and background. And so that everyone has that ownership, which we'll also mention on the next slide, please. It's not a solo report, as I mentioned. We want this to be sitting at a mirror with our decision-making body. Was that your advisory council? Was that your steering committee? Did you embed it into school site council? We want everyone to be a part of this, much like for my high school team, teams out there, the collaborative writing of the WASC report. We want all hands on deck to be a part of the reflection process, as well as the content that goes into the annual progress report. And that's for a sense of unity, that's for a sense of shared responsibility, and it is for amplified impact. It's the same reason that we are working with other partners. It's so that we are hearing all the voices so that we can respond to all the voices. Next slide.
I think that's me. Thank you, Ms. Siobhan. So again, everyone, I'm just going to apologize. I just popped a cough drop right now. So if my voice sounds a little scratchy, I apologize. But I'm I have the annual progress report and the shared decision-making teams and engagement. So next slide. So some feedback that we received from the state Transformational Assistance Center, we want to ensure that we are giving shared power and engaging multiple stakeholders during this completion process. So really engaging with our community members and our parents. Make sure that we're developing a shared understanding of what is a high quality or highly informative open-ended response. So working together, everybody is looking at this from different lenses. So, how do we blend those? And then we want to include local and multiple measures that capture where you're at in the process and what your intended outcomes in the context. So, next slide. And then shared decision-making teams, that is that can be very tough sometimes because you want to use a democratic process. We want it to be inclusive and an empowering environment, especially for some of our stakeholders who maybe are not always engaged. So making sure that we are creating those authentic, you know, uh, table spaces for our parents, our students, our families, our community partners, um, and that we are using strategies such as the power of five. So, is everybody have five fingers up? We're good. We're ready to move forward. No, we still have some fours, some threes. Sometimes maybe you have to go back a couple of spaces and seek your community member or your parents. Help them understand what you're really looking for, give them a little bit of additional knowledge so that you can build that consensus moving forward. So really important. And that shared power is something that is going to help you not only with your LEA and your site level decision making, but in all aspects of community school. So next slide, please. And then and I've kind of already spoke to it. I was ahead of myself, Dr. Kemp, but that authentic engagement. So just some of the feedback we got was you want to make sure you have both your site level and your LEAs. Who should be there, right? Siobhan spoke to the council. Who is the shared decision-making team that needs to be involved in that APR at both levels? And then making sure we're engaging, not just our families, right? But unlocking the silos and reaching out to our community partners so that they have a voice in the APR as well. We want to make sure that the APR is intended to align with our annual update and presentations for community school planning. We want data and outcome for the prior year at each school site and district. And then using the APR as a part of your community school engagement strategy. I just was talking with a grantee and they were sharing how they are going to incorporate it at their back to school night and then at the beginning of the year activities as well as a way to kind of just an added layer of information and communication for their families. So just some good stuff to share with you guys. Next slide. And then who should be engaged in the APR process? We have been getting a lot of questions around, who has to be and who's recommended to be. And so STAC has shared with us that these are the folks that are highly recommended to be involved in the school's APR process. Of course, you want your principal, your assistant principal. It says community school coordinator, but maybe it's your family engagement person, teachers, counselors. Definitely want support from all your classified staff members, students, family members, and then community members and your community partners. And then we'll go to next slide. And I turn it back to Dr. Kemp, I believe, correct?
Yes, hi and hello. So far we've talked about our mindset, making sure that we're shifting from that deficit mindset that some of our past reports are to now that asset-based practice, that asset-based mindset. Again, this is our APR as a reflection. Now we talked about the whole idea of being collaborative and that shared power piece, making sure that we're engaging our local community stakeholders from our administrators to our teachers, community partnerships, community members, families, everyone involved in that process. So now let's talk about filling it out. So we have all our stakeholders, we have our mindset together, and now we're going to complete this document. So one of the feedbacks that we received from the state was having a shared understanding of what a high quality or highly informative open-ended response is. So let's get into that. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about collecting high quality data, we now need to make sure that we have protocols set in place to determine what is considered high quality data. You know, we want to make sure that when you are collecting this data, that you are informing all stakeholders things related to your priorities. So we want to talk about performance, progress, and areas of growth going on in our LEA. And we also want to make sure that the data that we present is very, very clear, very, very transparent. It shows that we are taking some accountability with our progress, and it's also showing how effective we're being, right? So data, again, is a twofold. It's either going to show we're stagnant, it's going to show that we progress, and it's going to show we're effective. And this is what high quality data would do. And again, that transparency piece, making sure we're giving you all of this. We're not perfect, but we are working on it. Next slide, please. So a quick question in the chat. What do you think the characteristics of high quality data? What do you think are those characteristics in the chat? When you think about high quality, that great data that we want to share with our families, our partners, our teachers, everyone that's working on a community school process, what are those specific characteristics that you would think would give you high quality data when you're looking for data? So time relevant, we're seeing qualitative and quantitative, measurable. What else we have? Measurable, yes. Quantitative data, yes. Thorough, encompasses many perspectives. Absolutely, Jenna, absolutely. Okay, so let's go into some of those characteristics. And if you think of any, feel free to drop it in the chat. So let's share what those characteristics typically are. So anytime you're thinking about high quality data, you want to think about accuracy. The data should be accurate, free from errors, free from any biases. So again, Jenna brought it up, many perspectives, right? Bias means it's one-sided. We want to show it from all areas. What's the reality of what's actually going on at the school in regards to any performance activities and outcomes? Relevant. Is the data that you're giving me relevant to the goals that you put in place, relevant to the priorities that your school site is working on, relevant to what your LEA is working on? Is it going to give me some insight as a person who is receiving it? Do I find it insightful? Do I find it powerful? Is it informative for me to know what's going on in the school site? Does it give me a clear picture of what the school is actually working on? Reliable. It needs to be consistent and dependable. You should be able to follow it over a period of time where a person can easily look at it and see, oh, they've made some growth, or oh, there was a little decline. I wonder why. It should be very, very transparent, easy to read and understandable. And last, timeliness, right? Data should always be kept up to date. Collecting data once a year is not good because you're getting what's happened from the very beginning to the end. You want to do those in between check-ins. So, you know, for high school, sometimes they do it semester-wise, you know, 2 or 3 semesters, beginning and end. Elementary schools will do trimester, but points throughout the year that you have laid out to where you're constantly keeping the data up to date, excuse me, because you want to make sure that you're being responsive at all times. And you can't be responsive all the way at the end of the year. You need those check-ins throughout the year. Next slide, please. So in our APR, and there's one for each cohort, and we're not going to go over it in detail. On these, there's 3 slides, and they're going to show the open-ended questions that you have. So these are the open-ended questions for those that are taking the implementation APR for school site. Next slide, please. We have the open-ended questions for The implementation LEAs, you see they have more at 4. And then the next slide, please, are the open-ended questions for the planning grant. So these are just on here so you can have it for your reference as we go into this next section. You're going to want to reference these slides later. So they're in there just for your information. Next slide. So when we're talking about these open-ended questions on the annual progress report, currently I am very privileged to sit on a work group to where all we do is reflect on the data that has been given by the school sites and the districts. And one of the biggest conversations we had was in regards to the annual progress report. And one of the things that was missing in the data as we looked at it all from across the state is that powerful experience, the story, that narrative piece that you can take advantage of when you're answering open-ended questions. And you have to remember, it's not a list of everything that you've done. You do 100 things at a site. You don't want a list on the qualitative part of those open-ended questions. Think of maybe 1 or 2 things that can explain a powerful experience around your community school implementation. So we want to humanize the narrative. We want to make sure that you're sharing in these open-ended questions. You want to share authentic stories and experiences that as the reader's reading it, it kind of gives them a visual of what's going on at the school site. Like, wow, they're really doing this, or wow, they're really struggling with this as they're trying to hit priorities for certain student groups. You want to capture those nuances. So what are barriers that you may come across? What are strengths that are occurring that you cannot capture in the quantitative data piece, where you're just answering yes and no and checking a box? Sometimes you don't get all that information by looking at that. And that's the powerful piece about open-ended questions. You get to tell that story that the quantitative data does not allow you to tell. And you also want to share any anecdotes, any testimonies, anything to where you can make an emotional connection with the reader and the audience who's actually reviewing these APRs. Because again, you want to tell your story. Telling your story is so important in these open-ended questions. And that powerful story can really help put a visual and a really a red stamp on this is what they're doing and this is how they're doing it. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that the state gave us in regards to some advice on open-ended questions. And these are, please don't do these type of things, right? So one is avoid discussing every point without examples. Again, 2 or 3, 2 things that are going well, 2 things that aren't going well. Get some examples, go into depth. You know, you get 300, 600 words, go into depth of that experience that you're speaking about so you can get a better idea of what's going on. Avoid 1-sentence responses with no detail. You can't say the cat's running down the street. That's not telling me information. Where was the cat going? How fast was the cat doing? Where was the cat trying to go to? You know, you want to avoid those 1-sentence response with no details. Avoid listing long, raw data pieces. I took 325 surveys and we had 52 workshops and we had 200 people attend. All that is in a quantitative piece. In the qualitative piece, again, you are telling your story. You are telling the wonderful things that you're doing with the community schools model. You're telling those things that it's a struggle, but we're working on it. Again, your experience, your story. And for questions that asked about what you have accomplished, focus on a couple of things that are currently occurring, not things that are happening in the future, not things that are happening in the past, but what is currently happening now. So that is what they are looking for when you're answering open-ended questions. Next slide, please. Local and multiple measures. Next slide. So the third piece of advice, the feedback that was given from STAC was include your local and multiple measures that capture your implementation of the community schools framework and outcomes in your context. Again, each community school is going to look different because everyone's priorities and local context is different. So everyone's not going to have the same data, and it's okay that you use some of that local data. Next slide, please. So when you are identifying and utilizing local and multiple measures, you need to make sure that the data that you're showing clearly outlines whatever goals and objectives that you are trying to achieve. It is okay to use multiple measures. It's actually a good thing when you are presenting data that's giving you the same information from different perspectives. That's actually very strong, showing that you are being effective with whatever practice, whatever program that you are implementing. Consider your local context. There may be things going on within your specific environment that are unique from that school down the street. So what kind of data or what kind of measurement are you using for that to determine how effective you are at achieving that one goal that may only be valid to that school site, but not necessarily valid to another school site down the street? Engage your stakeholders. It is okay to talk to families. It is okay to talk to community members. You do not always have to give a survey. You can have a one-on-one conversations. You can get storytelling. Any information from them that you get is considered data and can be used in these questions. Prioritize equity. Remember, the community schools-based framework is not only an improvement strategy, it is also one based on equity, inclusivity, and access. And that should reflect in the measures that you are choosing as you're sharing data. And last, balance your quantitative and qualitative data. Both are important. They tell different stories and they both can be powerful. So please take advantage of that and have a balance of it. It's okay to have some surveys mixed with some focus groups. It is okay to do that. Next slide, please. Establish baseline and targets. So basically, this is where we're beginning and this is where we want to get. Regular monitoring, evaluating. Again, you're not doing it once a year. You're doing it throughout the year because we have to keep that data up to date. It is a process, which means you have a process for tracking it. And if you got to make adjustments on the way, you do it. Communicate to your stakeholders. Every time there's changes in that data, that's every time an opportunity for you to communicate that data to all of your stakeholders. Celebrate successes and learn from those challenges. It is okay to celebrate. Yes, we're doing this well. This is a challenge, but we're doing it well because that motivates your environment. That motivates the people around you. When you're too much saying you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you just kill the whole morale. Data should be used to uplift and to motivate those to do better within the environment. And then reflect. Reflect on the data that you're doing, reflect on how you can improve it, reflect on what's working well. Just have time to sit down and reflect. It's more than analyzing it and saying, here it is. Reflect on how that data can take you to the next level. Next slide, please. So in the chat, what are examples of different measures and metrics that you can use outside of attendance, outside of academics, and outside of parent involvement? Because those seem the most popular. But are there any other measures and metrics you can think that are used outside of those areas? And drop it in the chat. I'll wait one more minute. Oh, behavior supports, yes, very, very important.
Dr. Kemp, could you give me a synonym for measures and metrics?
Sure. So measures and metrics. So how are you keeping track of certain data outside of attendance, academic? How are you collecting it? Am I doing it on a spreadsheet and this is what I'm collecting? Am I using this type of assessment? Like for PBIS, I'm using the tiered fidelity inventory. I'm trying to track social emotional learning. So I may be using a Panorama Ed education platform that's helping me measure social emotional learning within the learning environment. Suspension data, yes. No-go list on spreadsheets, yes. Student wellness survey, student connectedness, yes. Those are all different measures and metrics. And just in case you didn't understand what the question meant, if you go to the next slide, we have examples. So these are some areas outside of the attendance, academics, and parent involvement piece that sometimes we don't look at, but we may have measures for. So we want to see how well we're doing with equity and inclusivity. I don't know why I can't stutter over that word. So you may be looking at diverse student populations and the type of coursework that they're taking. This is especially like in high school, right? Making sure that students have equal access to those CTE paths, those AP classes, those honor classes, assessing resources for all students. So I may be having stakeholders and student groups that are having certain barriers. Do I have resources and opportunities in place for them to help eliminate those barriers? That we're using culturally responsive teaching practices and curriculum evaluation. So I may be implementing culturally responsive teaching practices and curriculum in the classroom, but how effective are they? You can think of the area of health and wellness. We have physical fitness assessments. You know, that's mostly happen in the fifth, I think it's the 5th, 8th, and 10th or 11th grade. You can have nutritional habits and access to healthy meals. As you know, in San Bernardino County, we have a lot of, actually our whole inland, think about it, our whole inland RTAC, we have food deserts for some of those places. So how are our kids getting access to healthy meals? Anytime you do health screenings, immunization rates, how you are with your community partnerships and resources. Next slide, please. Arts and extracurricular activities, like how many people are actually participating in certain programs? You can have an extracurricular activity that has been popular for years, but as the change in culture of the school and the change of generations, it may not be popular anymore. And you may need to go back and revamp those classes that are being offered, those extracurricular activities that are being offered in your after school program. Community safety and well-being. So how many incidents of violence, bullying, harassment? How are we doing with our school safety measures and emergency preparedness drills? And social emotional well-being, from school climate surveys, seeing our morale at the school site to see how our parents doing, even the morale for our teachers, our classified staff, community members, anybody that has access to our campus. So these are examples of local and multiple measures that can be utilized in the APR. It does not have to be the California dashboard all the time. It does not always have to be the typical data that we use for CAS. Other data pieces can be used because if the state wants to see that, they have access to all of that. But what are those measures that somebody may not necessarily have access to? And it was stated perfectly in the chat. Diversify the metrics to help tell your story. Next slide. On it today. Are there any questions about what has been presented today? You just put it out there and answer the question for you if you don't ask it. Did the state provide exactly how we are supposed to answer these questions? No. They did not give you the exact answers you are supposed to utilize when answering the APR. Why? Because it's all based off of your local context. There is no wrong or right answer. Remember, the annual progress report is not compliance-based. It's with an asset-based mindset. You're putting the things that you are doing well, your implementation efforts, and things that you are working on. So there's no such thing as a wrong or right answer. The only thing that we wanted to make sure we did today is for you guys to understand the mindset that's expected around taking this annual progress report, the feedback that was given by the state, so you know how to approach some of those questions, who should be at the table. Again, this is not supposed to be done in isolation. This is a collaborative effort. And then just suggestions on different kind of measures that you can input inside the APR to assist with answering them. So I knew that was going to be a question. In the resources, if you notice on the slide deck, you saw little light bulbs on some of the slides. If you see a light bulb there, that means there's a resource inside the folder that goes with that. And that was mostly at the beginning of the presentation because there is slides in regards to changes that have happened in the APR, and there are slides to the expectation of the sections in the APR, and that's all in a resource folder. Something that you need to read on your own time because it's really, really technical, and I don't want anyone falling asleep on here because it's too technical. Are there any other questions?
Dr. Kemp, where could we draft or should we draft the APR? Should we type in Qualtrics? Like what's the format that's different this time?
The formats that's different this time are the capacity building strategies. So the last time for those, which is mostly implementation cohort 1 and planning grant cohort 1, when you guys answered the APR, you answered questions based on 9 capacity building strategies. They changed it to only 5. So now you're only answering in the 5 areas versus the 9. They also made the sections look a little bit neater. So instead of it all combined together, they broke it up so you can easily see it. So if you go to the resource folder, there actually are APR folders for each cohort, whether it's planning or implementation, and you'll see how that is set up. So that way you can get a better understanding before you actually go into Qualtrics to answer it. Thank you. That was a great question. Oh. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward. So, based off of what you have heard today about the APR, has your comfort level changed about your ability to be able to take it? So we're going to go ahead and launch that, and you can just go ahead and answer to the best of your ability. Okay, I'm going to share it. So I see a couple of people are at a no. So my suggestion would be please hang back during our office hours to discuss anything. And if you don't have any time today to discuss it, we're going to show you how you can get extra assistance. Because this whole thing, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable taking this. Again, even though you have until June 30th, realistically, for most people, you want to try to have this probably done by the beginning of June, because I know you're going to want to have your break and your vacation. You're human, you need that mental break. So if you are still at a no, we're going to have office hours after this, and we're also going to show you other ways on how you can get assistance, so that way we can make sure you are comfortable, because that is one of our supports. We need to make sure you feel good about doing this. Next slide, please. So we are going to go into updates and announcements. We have our participant feedback survey that you can give us that we'll go ahead and drop in the chat. If you are at pro level, you don't have to worry about stating back. You're a pro, handle your business, and we know that we are looking forward to reading an amazing APR once we have access to it. In the chat, you're going to see the feedback survey for today. Please fill that out when you get an opportunity. And we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to give it to me. Okay. So again, the STAC will be hosting APR office hours. These are the dates that they are hosting them. They have a set of dates that are Tuesday at 10 o'clock a.m. and a set of dates that are Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m. That QR code will give you the registration link that you need to have to register for those office hours. It is also in the chat. If you would like additional assistance, one-on-one support, you want to go through the process, you want to ask questions about specific questions, how you think you should answer it, that is what the Southern Inland RTAC is here for. We also have a QR code link there, and we're going to drop a link in the chat for you if you want to set up an appointment with us to have some one-on-one. Please do so. Again, we want to see you do well. We want you to be comfortable. This shouldn't be something that makes you feel yucky or give you anxiety when filling out. And we want to make sure this is a smooth process for you. We're here for you if you need us. Next slide. I'm going to pass it to Yvonne.
All right. So spring convening is coming up on April 19th. We're super excited. The team here has been hard at work. So we have a definite time for networking. You are going to hear from two panels. So we have a partners panel and we have our student voice panel, which really we're going to dive into what does it mean to have those powers of partnerships and connecting our community to our classroom. We also have a Garner Holt facility tour. We have a resource experience. And then we have our own director, Jennifer Gately, who will be doing an innovative demonstration on just what a community connected classroom could potentially look like. And again, this is all within our teaching and learning pillar. So I hope you can join us. Registration is still open. It will remain open until April 18th. If you have any questions, please reach out to our tech team. And I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything here. You can scan the QR code. I know that we can also put the Bitly into the chat if anybody needs that. And again, if there's any questions, please feel free to send them over. And we look forward to seeing you guys.
Pass it to Siobhan.
Thank you, Dr. Kemp and Yvonne. So to prepare everybody for our convening on Friday and to get our minds in the right places, we're going to revisit the concept of mindset shifts, and we're going to dive in to 3 facilitated breakout rooms, and we're going to discuss community schools and the classroom and 3 different perspectives on that. So we want to see all of you invite other people who are doing this work with you as we dive into the teaching and learning that of community schools, and come have a conversation. Let's start asking the questions. Let's start putting ideas out there. We know that the heavy lift of shifting instruction and instruction and pedagogy and curriculum, yes, it's huge. It's a big lift, and we want to start that conversation before we get to Friday, where we're going to lean into unlocking partnerships and how that elevates and improves our classrooms, and most importantly, centers our community. So come on out on April 17th. We'll have our peer learning webinar. We have shortened it by 30 minutes because we are going to see all of you on Friday. So we want to just get the conversation going. And Dr. Kemp.
Next slide. And again, here is our wonderful, expansive community schools team. Originally, there was 5, and now there are 16 of us. And we're just happy to be here to support. And we appreciate everybody coming on today. Here are the different ways that you can contact us. We have our website that has been launched. It's a continuous work in progress to make sure that we're giving you all the information that you need in regards to how we can help you with community schools implementation. And again, thank you so much for coming out to be with us today. Thank you to the community schools team for coming out. We all work together to try to do our best to provide the information that you guys need. And we are about to go into office hours for the next 30 minutes. So if you need us, stay behind. If you want, again, one-to-one assistance or access to the STAC APR office hours, I will post it again in a chat for you to get that information. Also, the slide deck is in a resource folder, so you can also get the information from there as well. And again, thank you for coming out. We hope everyone have a great evening.